Greetings, everyone. So before we start the session, if we would chant Namo Tassa together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. All right. So as practitioners, as people who constantly make time and effort to trying to pursue the path as dictated, no, sorry, as taught by the Buddha. I was going to use the word dictated. Taught by the Buddha. We find ourselves when we study the Dhamma, when we listen to different teachers speaking on the practice, we sometimes find ourselves in a sense of doubt as to where we should start, where we should start. And as we go about attempting different practices, different approaches, different mechanisms that could make the path easier for us, I personally am inspired by the meticulous and systematic Dhamma teachings rendered by the Buddha, perfected over the time of his practice as the Bodhisattva, where Buddhas achieve the state that they do and the level of enlightenment as they do, cleansing themselves of the hindrances and all of that, so that we do not have to explore. Do you understand? Meaning, the teachings of the Dhamma are so clear. They are emphasized with such great clarity that we do not need to explore to find a path. The path is clear. The path is clear, which makes this, or should make this, or our practice should make our practice all the more easier, don't you think? If the mechanisms are there, if the teachings are systematic, why is it that we find ourselves in a position of doubt when it comes to where should I begin? It should not be so. It should definitely not be so. So when we speak about Vipassana and knowing that Vipassana or insight meditation is the crux of Buddhist teaching and the whole reason that the Buddha came out of his isolated life to now teach this practice and teachings to all of us, even though he did it 2,600 years ago, we find the Dhamma appropriate and apt even today. I mean, more so today, with the amount of hindrances, with the amount of distractions, with the amount of suffering, with the amount of our lifespan, the shortening of our lifespan, and the increase of illnesses, diseases, all of these things that brings us to a position of feeling trapped. What better word would be there to explain the situation that we find ourselves in at this current moment in time, trapped because of our needs and wants, trapped because of relationships where these relationships might not be bringing us the happiness that we first thought it would, trapped because of the capitalistic world that we live in. If we stop working, how are we going to afford our lives? How are we going to do the things that brings us enjoyment? Trapped in every sense of the word, isn't it? But this Buddha's doctrine, it shines its ray of light and insight deep into our living situations, of course, our scenarios and circumstances, but it penetrates deep into the reason and existence of our being. We know that when we take the Dhamma is pursued on the basis or on the power of our individual understanding. We know this, right? Now that Dhamma is listened to, is seen in practice, is experienced by this individual, right? This individual. This individual experiences that Dhamma and could experience that Dhamma owing to their own individual interests and motivations, could see Dhamma in each and everything, including washing the dishes that we don't want to wash. I'm speaking for myself on that line. However, what does that say? That says that the experiencer, this complex, this me, this myself, interacts with opportunities for Dhammic learning every moment of our living, waking lives. How do we experience this? We experience this through our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, and our whole bodies. This experience is put together in the mind. Now then, one would come to imagine, then where do I apply the Dhamma to? The Dhamma is to be applied within that complex, nowhere else, right? We cannot learn the Dhamma and go tell everyone that annoys us in our life, this is the Dhamma, practice it so I can be happy. Just imagine. You tell your children or you tell your family, you tell your neighbors, this is the Dhamma, listen to it so I can be happy. No, that is not the practice. The practice is entirely within ourselves. And how do we experience ourselves? Through what I just named the 6 senses, the sensory doors. So everything, all the defilements that would arise, the bridge to those defilements activating and becoming powerful is because of a mind with unwholesome or rather unwise attention, grasping these objects that come through the sensory doors. The sensory doors. We have then a classification of these types of distractions that could arise. We have those distractions in Pali. We know the Anusaya, the Parayuttana, and the Vitikam, and the 3 types of defilements, right? The kileshas. These 3 types, when the object is strong, as strong as the object is, these defilements become activated. Where? Not outside, but inside. This is where Vipassana is applied to. However, we all know that when the mind is all over the place, it is very difficult to have that sense of clarity, to understand this is a hindrance, this is wholesome, this is unwholesome. Sometimes we only, or maybe even it would be fair to say most of the time, we only realize it when we start experiencing the negative effects of that action, isn't it? Only at the negative effects. The Buddha says the same thing. The Buddha says the unwise will keep on being unwise up until the results of their actions come to fruition. The results of their actions comes to fruition. So karma vipaka. However, when we separate karma vipaka from karma, we know exactly where to act at the karma level. Meaning, karma arises from the root K-A-M, which is action. Karma is action itself. This includes actions of mind, actions of body, and actions of speech. So the best place to start, as the Buddha says, to tackling this, how would I say, getting onto this raft which is taken with the current of the river, is to first tell yourself, I am going to have attention. Establishing attention with effort. Because attention is something which is there in every degree with everything that we do, be it work, be it your household chores, be it whatever else that you would do, we would have attention there. However, it's not about having attention. It is having the right attention, which we say yonso mansikara, which should now take back the power that we have given to the 5-6 sensory doors and tell it, listen, I'm aware. Do you understand? Does that make sense? However, this is yet too ambiguous. The Buddha did not leave us on that end. This is just still too ambiguous. It is too general in nature, right? So when we are talking about these very personal experiences of life, let it be grieving the loss of a loved one, or a mother or a father being unable to accept the growth of their child from being a young, cute baby into growing up into being an adult. All these changes that takes place in our life, just having attention just doesn't cut it, because it's too ambiguous in nature. It causes the practitioner a lot of stress. And we know this, isn't it? Trying to sort of apply it again and again, again and again. It causes, it's a lot to do. And we already do so much. So how can we, or what does the Buddha say in relation to this? The Buddha says, the only reason that we find the world overwhelming is because the world controls and takes over our life. The moment that we instate or have an established practice of concentrating on the things that are within or right in front of us, the hurdles that we face right now, not defected by thoughts of the past or the future, but being within the present, we now become far more in control of what we are feeling and experiencing at this very moment in time. At this very moment in time. This does not say that we are going to forget about the past or have no ambitions in the future. What this only says is it speaks on the importance of concentration upon the present, focusing on what matters most right now. So when we take an occasion where we are in a tricky situation that is a little bit stressful to handle within the present, right, happening right now, and when our focus is rendered upon this very moment, we find that that stress goes away. Now it is just an interaction. A person, let us say, is saying something, right? Is saying something. This is a task This is something which is a conversation. When you're right in the conversation, right in the present, your mind is not running all over, right in the present, you find that this conversation is far more easier to deal with, to handle, to process, to work with in every single meaning of its word. In every single meaning of its word. This is not to say I must apply anicca, dukkha, anatma to every moment, but that automatically happens as the mind goes deeper into concentration. It understands automatically that this is an interaction, that this is neither a bad interaction or a wholesome interaction. This is an interaction. Now that is the crux of Vipassana. That is the absolute crux of Vipassana, everyone. These insights that occur in our life as we have a lot of speakers speaking on this from all walks of life, what do they say? They say that the best creativity when it comes to whatever it is that you do is when you're not stressed over the other things that you have going on in your life. When you're able to empty your mind without any sort of bias whatsoever and bring yourself into the present, you find your creativity. You find a certain sense of liberation, don't you think? A certain sense of liberation which allows you to now be with the present. That present moment is very much valuable to us. When we go into the deeper teachings, let us say the dependent or the teachings of dependent origination, when we go into the deeper teachings of consciousness, of Chetasika, of the Rupas, we find that within the present moment, these occurrences of nature become far more clear, vividly clear to a person. Now, in the person being able to know of these attributes within our life, within this very moment, we are able to tackle that. Now, how do we do that? First of all, one must engage in a livelihood where one makes sacrifices for the sake of mental liberation. When one does this repetitively, right, this is called in the Patthana, this is called the Asevana Pachaya, right? Now, Asevana Pachaya is when one series of thought arises repetitively, repeatedly. That series becomes far more powerful than when it was just a single series running. Does that make sense? Right? So it is like, for example, let us say you are hammering a nail into the wall, right? Now you don't have enough room, or you're not taking your hand back enough to create a powerful force where you can hammer the nail down, maybe just even in just one blow. So you're doing little stuff, right? Little sort of knocks on the nail so that it goes in little by little. But if you had room to take that hammer back, to create that force with velocity, what happens? You develop a strong amount of strength in that process, a strong amount of strength. When that occurs, now the mind has more strength. So our Sevana Pacha here comes into play with our practice when we repeat the practice again and again and again. We repeat the practice. And how does that happen? With dedication, with need, with perseverance, and almost becoming tenacious in your practice. Tenacious, where the practice becomes so something that you are so in need of in this moment that you're willing to do anything for it. within this very moment. And the only thing that you can do for the practice are two things: right attention, and repeated practice. Repeated practice. This is called the asevana pachaya naya, right? In Vipassana meditation. Then the meditator sees that there is substantial development happening with regards to their meditation and focus, right? Meditation and focus. This is why Anapanasati is rendered as one of the most effective meditation techniques out there. Anapanasati is spoken of by the Buddha as one of the most effective methods of practice in this path. Why? Because your whole life comes to one singular point in Anapanasati. It's not going all over the body, because that is also ambiguous when it comes to directed focus and attention. Anapanasati brings your entire focus into the present moment at one singular point. And when it does that, all you've realized, all the stresses that you had, all the burdens that you have, all the things that you are worried about with regards to life now disappears. This is just in the moment of you bringing your mind to the present and attributing it to one singular point in your meditation, in your awareness, in your sensory perception. You realize all of those burdens disappear. Hence, for a person to cultivate deep into Vipassana, we realize that the practice of Anapanasati comes very much in handy. Can we skip this step? Is then another question that I would cheekily ask myself. Can we skip this step? It's a lot of work. No, you can't. You can't. And let me tell you why. Because when we go deeper and deeper into Vipassana, you will realize when we take impermanent suffering and non-self, and we try to apply it into life, initially a meditator starts with trying to apply it to gross experiences that we have, right? So a death of a loved one, people would recollect the aspects of the impermanence of life to get over it, right? At least to help us get over it, right? Things that we loved, experiencing health, things like that, things that we've lost, beauty, all of these things we would bring in impermanent suffering and non-self. When we go through deep suffering in life where we feel entrapment, we would recollect the aspects of the Dhamma. So it does help. It does help, definitely. And we know so many stories in our own lives, and of course stories of people that we are friends of, or stories that we've heard, where impairment or the application of anicca dukkha anatta, impermanent suffering and non-self, have worked. However, our kileshas are far more insidious than that, right? The Dhamma takes us to the absolute core of the earth's crust, like the earth's crust, to the absolute core of why we exist, mind and body, and the subtle attachment that we have to that mind and body. Hence, we come to the crossroads of a decision, which is, in Vipassana, what do I look at? Is a question, right? What do I look at in Vipassana? Or how do I look at this? How do I gauge the phenomena that arises within this very present moment? Whatever technique that you do, it could be Anapanasati, it could be the jhanas, it could be Vedananupassana, right? The sensations, it could be Kayagata Sati, it could be Asubha Bhavana, it could be Attika Sanya, it could be the 40 odd meditation techniques that have been taught, right? What do I look at? Now I'm looking at my body of bones. I'm looking at the flesh on my body. I'm looking at the organs. I'm looking at the different aspect, the 32 parts of the body, and I'm contemplating Vipassana. But is that actually the deepest parts of Vipassana? I don't think so, right? Because that is just that layer of, that hard layer, the gross layer of settled milk on top of our teacups, right? That is not deep Vipassana, everyone. Deep Vipassana takes us beyond that. It's absolutely amazing. It's even mind-boggling sometimes when we start experiencing those deep states of Vipassana, where we realize when a consciousness occurs, let us say something to see, something to hear, something to smell, something to taste, something to feel. When one of these impingement occurs, and as we know right now, you're listening to me and looking at me, so these two are going all about, right? It's arising and passing again and again. But now, as the focus and attention increases and increases and increases, we start beginning to see these consciousnesses and their aftermath effects as it unfolds. As it unfolds. Example. When there is something to see, which means that there is attention, there is light, there is a prasada rupa or a retina that works within the body. And when there is an object, something to see, when these factors are present, what arises is the light carries an object and it reflects upon the retina. When this reflecting upon the retina takes place, something called contact occurs. Contact occurs when there is an object perceived by the idol, an eye consciousness, right? Eye consciousness. And the prasada rupa itself is activated when three factors arise. Phassa or contact takes place. When contact takes place, this object that has been grasped or taken or has reflected itself upon the retina is now taken by the mind to advert to what is this object, to answer the question, what is this? The mind runs a couple of series. And then, depending upon your wise attention or unwise attention, your mind carries the object forward, right? So let us say this is something nice, something beautiful. However, the mind is so drenched in anger that even something that is so nice and beautiful that is occurring and unfolding in front of you is taken in a manner that is subjectively wrong, or something that causes annoyance, something which becomes a foundation for anger to propel itself now through the anusayas into your mind, now sort of rendering you kind of saturated in this hateful sort of atmosphere of mind. And then from there, if it grows, what happens is you will voice your opinions rooted in anger. Or if you have no physical discipline, you will start throwing punches or slaps or moving your hands in a manner that shows your distaste for what is occurring. Now, this is what we do in everyday life, isn't it? Contact occurs again and again and again. And the mind responds in the mundane way that it responds, right? Hence, now let us say the person thoroughly annoyed says something to hurt, says something to cause distress, right? Now you propel the situation from your mind into your body, and from your body, you've now affected another person's mind or body, mind and body. Now, ara anto jata bahi jata jatai jahita pada, now a knot has been created. Now you cannot all of a sudden, yes, of course, you can say sorry. But if you don't say sorry at that moment, it turns into a conversation that takes about 30 minutes, I've seen. Right? If you leave it for a little bit longer, it turns into an almost counseling session to counsel yourself and to counsel that person to forgive you. Anto jata bahi jata jatai jahita pada, which is we create those knots in life, isn't it? Knots in life, all because of what? A passa that arose, a contact that arose because of three reasons. Because of Chakku Vinyana, Chakku Pasada, and the Aramana. Chakku Vinyana, Chakku Pasada, and Chakkaramana. Because of these things, everyone, we create these impacts within our mind. So the first thing is discipline. In understanding that these objects, whatever unfolds around us, it unfolds because as it unfolds, the reactions that we do give it is within our scope of power, within our scope of power. I make the decision, not that object, whether I react negatively or positively. If you react negatively, now that is a place that you've lost. Example. Let us take a very nice example. What is an example? Let us take a marital relationship, right? A marriage. Things go wrong, right? Things go wrong. And let us say, for you as a person, right? Let us say the other party is a wrongdoer, okay? After being caught in the act of some wrongdoing, right, which might be something that is a break of the relationship, you forgive this person and you let them into your life again, only for that person to again do the same, right? Again, this is only an example, right? Some people do change. This is only an example. Now, the victim, feels victimized and also feels very bad for allowing the mistake to happen twice, right? However, let us say, so then the other person, let us say, asks for a divorce. Okay, that is situation one. You give the divorce, whatever. However, now you're traumatized by it. Let us spin the situation around, right? Let us spin the situation around. You ask for the divorce. You ask for the divorce and you get the divorce, and hopefully half of the house and everything the person has as well. Because you deserve it regardless. You ask for the divorce. Now you get the house, you get whatever. Now see, when you make the choice, you feel happier. You have a sense of solace. I made the decision. But when someone else makes the decision and you go through the impact of it, now what happens? Now you feel you don't have anything to be happy about. At that moment, you feel victimized. You feel like something wrong. You've done something wrong here, right? You shouldn't have forgiven the second time and all of that. Do you understand? Does that make sense? When we make the decision first, right? If we make the decision, then it is not a sense of powerlessness. And we see this in a lot of meditators, mind you, right? Those occasions in life where the person has been victorious, when it comes to the deeper getting rid of the hindrances with the kileshas, those kileshas don't come up. What does come up is when the person has felt a victim. Those we find in, as we progress in Vidarshana, Vipassana, Jnana, we find that those occurrences really come up. Pain, hurt, people cry. Why? Because their egos were hurt. Because they've lost the battle. If we all, let us say, as practitioners, we tell ourselves, I am not going to lose. What would that mean? That would mean I am not going to give in to the kilesha in whatever circumstance. If there is aggression that is faced, I am not going to give in and reciprocate with aggression. If there is a situation that brings out those hindrances, what would that mean? I am not going to reciprocate with the hindrances. Does that make sense, everyone? That is how we untangle the knots. Untangle the knots. And this we find in Vipassana, we find childhood traumas, past traumas, all being literally being unknotted as we go deeper and deeper. The pain in your life just simply disappearing. The hurt, the grief, the anguish, the fear, all of that just completely disappears as we go on. Why? Because we relate to all of those occurrences in a particular way of Vipassana. What is that way of Vipassana? That way of Vipassana is seeing them as they truly are. The fact that what causes you fear, or let us say anger, that it was a complex of mind and matter working together with external objects, not projecting the anushayas, the kileshas into this moment, making you now anything that attacks the ego, you will be upset. We will be upset because the ego is like the molten core of the earth, keeping the gravitational pull of the earth so that we can have life. Anything that disrupts that molten core or that ego is something that disrupts life. That is the teaching of Vipassana, everyone. How do we see this? How do we see this? The only way to break this deeper or progress and break this apart, breaking that anger that you have, breaking that anguish, breaking all of those burdens that you've been carrying on your shoulders for the whole extent of your life, all of that breaks when we come to realize one phenomena or one nature. What is that? That this is mind and body, cause and effect. Cause and effect. Realizing cause, there is no ayang ekaya no maggo. There is no other way. There is no other way, everyone. Cause and effect. But cause and effect of what? Not the gross. We use the gross initially. The finer phenomena that arise in this very moment. Cause and effect of that. When I have the anger arising in me, the consciousness, noting the consciousness and the chetasikas that it arises with, giving rise or essence to that consciousness that I'm experiencing, is Vipassana. That's the first step. The second is the mind now being able to note the cause and effect of it. That is Namarupa Parigha and Pachya Parigha Jnana. The first two jnanas right there. How does it come? It comes through the understanding of Dhamma, and that understanding of Dhamma being applied to the present moment experience. And what is this present moment experience? Impingement upon the eye base, the ear base, the nose base, the tongue base, the body base, and the heart base, or the mind base, we call it. Is that clear, everyone? Does that make sense? Right? In order for the mind to be able to render itself or exist at a level where it is focused upon the present, not the past, not the future, but the present, you need concentration and focus. You need concentration and focus. So any meditational guidance or retreat that you would go into, you would find, from Goenka to Tetsui to all of these different teachers, you find that they will always do a bit of anapana concentration at the beginning. And why is this? For focus upon the present. For focus upon the present. The more that you focus on the present, everyone, what happens is your wise attention, your potential for wise attention increases drastically. I cannot tell you how much it increases, drastically increases. The habitual tendency of what is impinged upon the six sensory doors to now bridge between an experience into now becoming a kilesha or sankhara is broken. Because now, with present moment attention, the aggravation of the hindrances does not arise. So you take things as they are, they arise and pass away. Hence, the kileshas reduce drastically. Kileshas reduce drastically. We find that our life makes more sense, that it is not like someone else is driving your ship, but rather you choose, or you are driving that ship wholly by yourself. And that gives you great amount of power and control over your life. Your life. This goes even beyond, and it affects the energy that you have. And through that energy, it affects the causal effects that comes to be in and around your life. But remember, never be deluded, because that thought pattern can also cause you distress. Remember that every experience that you're having is because of three things: because of a vijnana, because of an object, and because of a sensory door, nothing else. So when it is you that is getting aggravated, or it is these kilesas within that are being, it is not because of anyone else in the external world. It is because of your unwise attention. We take the responsibility upon ourselves, which is not to say that you're responsible for everything that goes on in the world. No, no, no. But you are responsible of your ship. You are responsible of what you are feeling. You're responsible of your quality of sleep and your decisions about your health, your mental and physical well-being. You're responsible for that, not anyone else, not the world. Who can take that responsibility for you? Only you can. And how do you do? Guard your senses. The Buddha says, guard your senses. The Buddha says, monks, up until you fall upon or start practicing the path, through the stage that you actually achieve and attain, there is no rest. There is no rest. The Buddha says, to develop an attitude of disgust to hatred, lobha, dosa, and moha. Disgust, he says. Do not allow these things into your life, because it is like that person, they'll put their foot in through the door first and move their whole body in, up until now this house becomes theirs. Your house becomes another person. How can you love that? But what is this other person? It is your greatest foe, your hindrances, your evil shadow following you about and looking for that opportunity to enter. So this depression that you might feel, this stress and anxiety that you might feel, this loss of control that you might feel with regards to your life, rendering you ineffective. All of that, everyone, regardless of what circumstance or situation that you might be finding yourself in, you can manage and deal with it. You really can. The first thing is right attention. Right attention. And I think with every part of the Dhamma, when we realize the Bodhisattva took responsibility for his life. And because he did, regardless of what circumstance, what did he do? He worked towards his goal. Hence, he was blessed. He was blessed with so many things. He was blessed with so many powers. So blessed that he has such a great following, even 2,600 years. I mean, what kind of person would they have been in reality? What kind of person? When we die, we are forgotten within the course of a year or two. The Buddha? Amazing, isn't it? The Buddha, 2,600 years, we chant, we light lamps, we offer our hard-earned money for the sasana, for the mission that he started. That is just amazing. Imagine how selfless would he have been as a being, treading upon the same earth and land that we do, to develop such power. Selflessness, everyone. Selflessness. That selflessness will be your friend. Just imagine selflessness as we see it in our lives, our parents, right? What a strong impact does a good, beautiful mother, a tenacious mother, have on our lives? Isn't it because of the good upbringing, the instilling of moral virtues, right and wrong, the force that they have by which they have impacted our lives for education? Isn't that the result that we are experiencing today, each and every one of us? Yes, of course, there are some good mothers, there are good mothers, and there are some, not so good mothers. This is nature, this is the world, these are our karmas. However, at one point, we realize everything that we carry is because of that selfless love. Just imagine the selflessness that the Buddha might have cultivated to be able to impact a beautiful sense of insight and change within each and every one of us. I would say that is a huge amount of power, huge amount of power. And even at this very moment, for all of us as practitioners, the more that we are able to become or embody a sense, a tiny tad of that selflessness in our observation of mind and body, our insight starts to explode, everyone. Explode because of that selflessness. The moment that we are able to observe a situation of the present, which is through the impingement of the mind and the body. And when we learn that we can observe this occurrence selflessly, not equating it to my ego, but selflessly observe this, then you realize, even in your insights, you've had all of those insights. Why? Because of that selfless observation. That is what we train through concentration. Does that make sense, everyone? Does that make sense? Because whenever our concentration of the present comes or is affected by the past or the future, it will be hindered. For example, let us say a person does a mistake, or we do a mistake, and then we always remind ourselves of this mistake that we've done. Then where is the growth going to happen? If you're going to hold yourself accountable to it every living moment, remind yourself, fill your hearts with guilt and suffering, when are you going to grow? How are we going to die? if we have made, or if we have really taken into account and made proper, try to cure the situation, and you've tried your very best to repent and to make changes in your life. But if you choose to carry the past with you, we all know the suffering it brings into our life. Where is the growth going to happen? If we are only going to be living in the future, we know that that also destroys our present. We forget to enjoy the things that we have, and we attach ourselves wholly to the future. The only moment that we exercise true power, mind and body, is the present, nowhere else. And in doing so, we cultivate a deep richness of life, deep richness of life, and of course, our power. Does that make sense, everyone? Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? Anything? So, if I might then ask a question, right? Something that I would ask if I was in the audience is, okay, Bhante, what is the Dhamma that we need to know to progress in Vipassana? Right? That is something that I would be thinking. What exactly should I be knowing to progress in the Vipassana? Right? Because we spoke of the Dhamma, no? And there are 86 parts of Dhamma, 1,000 parts of Dhamma, right? 84 parts of Dhamma. What exactly should I know to cultivate Vipassana of the Dhamma? The answer to that is, everyone, you must know mind and matter. Does that make sense? You must know mind and matter, because we are breaking down through Vipassana, we are breaking down the self. You must know exactly where this self is rising and how it manifests within this mind and body complex. So what is the knowing of mind and matter? This comes down to, everyone, the Buddha preachers. Within the sasana, the Pariyapti, Patipatti, and the Pativeda sasana, the first sasana that would come to demise from us, right, is within the Pariyapti sasana, within the sasana of learning, right, the Abhidhamma. And within the Abhidhamma, the Patthana, right, the Patthana. But the Abhidhamma as a doctrine is going to pass before everything else passes. Hence, I would say that the best way to support the sasana from that demise and fall is the learning of the Abhidhamma. Because when we go deep into the Abhidhamma, when we start observing, or rather learning, the Abhidhamma through the Abhidhamma Sangraha and going into the other books, what we realize is the mind arises in 84 or 121 different ways. One single consciousness can be affected by 52 types of cetasikas that arise in a unique signature with each consciousness. When these consciousnesses arise, it puts into flow consciousnesses which would give birth to respective rupas. So, for example, let us say you lead a very happy life. Your body would mimic that happiness through essential rupas that would show that you are happy, having a happy, full life. Let us say you've led a life of depression and sadness and worry and anguish. Our bodies would mimic those emotions and actions, isn't it? So now you look of a person who is happy, you look of a person who is sad. However, now there's a person here. I am happy, I am sad. There is an I there. We break that I by noting that this is not I, but this is Nama, Rupa, and mind and matter, and cause and effect. When you now take up a way of life that is rooted in good, it gives rise to wholesome states of mentality and materiality. Now that depressing look starts to shift. You start looking healthier. You start looking happier. The dark circles start to fade. The lines, all the health issues, slowly you become healthier as well. Your reports are looking better themselves. Your blood itself is looking better. Your white blood cells start energizing itself. What is that? The rupa. But now I'm healthy. I'm beautiful. I look far better. There's an I there as well. We break that as well. Do you understand? All sankharas, all formations of material and mind, mentality and materiality can be broken down in three different ways. It can be broken down into the five aggregates, broken down by the formula of the five aggregates: Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. It can be broken down into the 12 ayatanas, right? Chakkayatana, Sotayatana. It can be broken down into ayatanas. And it can be broken down into 18 types of elements, dhatu, 18 dhatu. But how are you going to break this up? Everyone, the Buddha did not go through all of that to leave us ended with questions. Those questions are also founded in the Dhamma. Actually, when you have the right foundations, you will have no questions, right? So what do we learn? We learn that this complex of self is built upon the six sensory doors. The six sensory doors keeps on formulating and producing formations. Those formations can be broken down into the five aggregates, the 12 ayatanas, and the 18 dhatus. Whatever mode of practice that you pursue, you will come down to the five khandhas, the 12 ayatanas, and the 18 dhatus. What do you know of these three? Is my question to you. Let's take the five least ones. Sounds easy, isn't it? Five is better than 12 or 18, right? Things. So let's take five. When you take five, the five formula, which is the Panchaskandha formula, the five aggregate formula, now you start breaking up your existence into five factors. We know the Rupa is materiality on its own. The other four are all to do with mentality. Everything that arises within this moment, it will automatically, first of all, of course, අර දත්මිටි නෑ දත්මිටි ද කියන්නේ දත්මිටි නේ දත්මිටි කාගෙන you will have to add, you know, sort of eating your own, grinding your own teeth, you will have to push yourself. Yes, of course, like everything else in life, right? But when you start getting into the flow of it, right? Now, things as you see in front of you will start dissolving, everyone. That experience is life-changing. You will look at your husband and you will see the five aggregates. You will look at yourself in the mirror and you will see the five aggregates. This is not a hallucination. This is Vipassanā at play. Right now, let us say that your boss or the person that you're working for, or maybe your distraught child, is giving you bad sort of vibrations through their sound. This sound, as it reaches, this will break into the five khandhas. This is absolutely amazing. This is something that everyone should experience. As a Buddhist, I think it is your responsibility to experience why we respect the Buddha. And at this moment, when you first see the breaking up of everything that you considered self, into the 5 khandhas, into the 12 ayatanas, or into the 18 dhatus, you realize what a hallucination we've put ourselves to live and abide by. You realize that this anger, this wrong, these sort of objects that impinge upon your eyes or your ears or your nose or your 6 sensory bases, all of this is creating, or when taken, it can be taken with Yonisamansakara or Ayonisamansakara. When you take it by Ayonisamansakara, it creates anguish, it creates doubt, it creates anger. But this is a process that you would see unfolding right within you, shifting your level of experience from the world that you believe to be true to realizing cause and effect play right within this complex of mind and body. It is an almost amazing experience. The happiness that you derive from that experience at that moment is something that you simply cannot put into words, because you realize, heavens, this Dhamma that I've been trying to practice for so long, this cause and effect that I couldn't understand, what the Buddha was talking about, now makes so much sense. That is where you start Vipassana, everyone. That is the starting of Vipassana. When you start seeing the self, the being, as 5 khandhas. Now, not just naming everything. Nama, this is Rupa, this is Nama, this is Vedana, this is not naming, because you can't name like that up until Dhammanusati arises. This is when you have the foundations of Sati through Anapana Sati, where your focused attention is powerful. You can divert you can impinge an object with that strong focus of Samatha, all of that. Then you start seeing first the Rupa, then the Nama. You break that up. It breaks up. Initially, you have to break it up. Then it starts breaking up. Then your Vipassana starts. So all of you who are here, these states are very much reachable within our very lifetime, or with the busy lives that you lead. But what is important, that is why we say what is important, Asevanapacha is very important. Asevanapacha allows you to develop a strong sense of focus and attention with power, where you can impinge upon objects. Javana processes become so strong that when you advert to an object, that object is adverted through with strong Yonisamansakara, aid in the practice. The only reason that we might have followed Dhamma and not seen results within our own life, yes, I know the Dhamma, but what use is Dhamma if we do not taste the Dhamma? If I cannot taste the impact of that Dhamma, if I cannot truly see what the Buddha saw through his attainments, that is very much possible. But the most important thing, getting your foundations right and starting your practice. Cultivate a sense of strong samatha, focus, concentration. And with that strong focus, concentration, we go on to now adverting to mind and body separately, then starts the Vipassana. Does that make sense? Gaini, do you have a question?
Bhante Pannavamsa, quick one. You mentioned about living in the present moment. So in our day-to-day life, we sometimes have to plan ahead. So sometimes, I plan for tomorrow, and I keep on going to tomorrow and then coming back and plan my present moment. Likewise, I go to my past as well, because I try to see what has happened wrong in the past and try not to do it in the future. So I do plan. Does this consider as not living in the present moment? And also another question is, related to that is prapancha. So I was just thinking, does prapancha considered as living in the future and not living in the present moment? And the first question as well. So both, please, Bhante, if you can clarify. Thank you.
Lovely question, Gaini. Very apt and appropriate. The first one, living in the present does not mean that we do not take lessons or we do not look at the future to, of course, plan, right? But is there a moment, let us say, Gaini, an occasion like this, the things that we have to get done tomorrow, right? Now, the only thing that you're just planning right now, but the things that you have to get done tomorrow is taking over your present, right? Let us say you have a full list of meetings back to back to get through, right? And a story of our lives, right? Documentations to prep and finalize, right? All of these things, right? Now, this is to be done tomorrow. However, it's affecting your very present, right? You cannot get started till tomorrow, right? Example, you cannot get started till tomorrow. You're not going to finish the meetings tomorrow, right? Today, the meetings that are tomorrow, you're not going to be able to finish it today, right? All of these things. So then, being the present is what? Being in the present is averting our attention to what has to be done tomorrow, the future, but not letting that future control the present. Does that make sense? Spilling over to the present, right? Example, let us say you have been given a project, right, which in the past you struggled a bit, right? Now, in the present, and then in consideration of the future, what happens? You learn what should happen is, okay, where did I go wrong in the past? Okay, these are the things that I went wrong in the past. And usually this is dealt with when that project finishes, isn't it? Okay, this is where I should better myself. The report should be like this, blah, 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 all of that. However, what happens when that past experience now, in a way, makes you stutter or rather face a discomfort in what you're going to do in the future, which is those set of meetings that are coming up tomorrow? Does that make sense? That is that control, Gaini, right? It is like, it is like when we would take, okay, what is going to happen to me in the future, right? Who's going to take care of me, right? Will I be able to walk? Will I be healthy? And then that anxiety, let us say now you have a child, right? That anxiety you push on to the child. And you cultivate hopes and say, I hope my child will take care of me. Then we get so stressed out by instilling values and goodness in the child so that the child remembers to take care of the parents. But we are so stressed out. Make a veida. Make a veida. We are stressed out, right? Now you're more focused in your engagement with the child. It becomes more focused on things going the way that you plan rather than a consideration of selflessness. Do you get what I mean? So it
Very
is
good. Yeah.
it is not in sort of not being able to work with the past or the future, but not letting the past or the future affect this moment right here, right now. That can be done. It definitely can be done. I mean, think of these sort of monks who run huge monasteries, right? I mean, if you would take, for example, Mahasi Sayadaw, right? Mahasi Sayadaw has in Burma, he has a monastery. Every kilometer, there's a Mahasi center. And these centers are not small, sort of, small huts. These are huge construction, huge. And I think Mahasi Sayadaw would have more than 500 or 1,000 monasteries in one district, right? And just imagine, these districts are huge, of course. Just imagine the stress on the man, Just imagine, right? But when, Mahasi Sayadaw is someone who is renowned to be an enlightened being, right? The capacity of your capacity to be within the present allows you to not take those encumbrances on as stress. And that is a very important thing, as stress. You do what needs to be done at this very moment, and you will reap the fruits of your actions. That is karma, ABCs of karma and karma vipaka, isn't it? Right? And we experience this in meditation as well. When we get into meditation, we are so taken aback by will I progress? Will this work out for me? Will I be able to do this? Will I effectively be able to cultivate samadhi? And all of these worries arise. Then what happens? Samadhi does not arise, right? Samadhi arises when the hindrances are not present. How do the hindrances become, or how do we become free of the hindrances within the present? When we don't want anything, right? That is your answer to the second question, Gaini. Prapancha. Prapancha activates itself only when you want something, right? Only when you want something. Tanha, ditti, mana. Tanha, greed, ditti, views, mana, conceit. These three work together to make you want. So you want to experience samadhi, tanha arises because you have no idea what samadhi is. You have no idea what true samadhi, a pranita samadhi feels like. You do not know the mechanisms of samadhi. Hence, you can't arouse samadhi with greed. It will never happen. It is only when you completely, there is this story of a monk. I don't remember his name, but I met him in Australia a couple of times. He was a beautiful monk, right? He was living in this beautiful plush hill, which was sort of the Chinese owners had Chinese Australian owners had given him this plot of land within their whole sort of acreage, where he had a container, one of those converted containers, right? On top of this, it was absolutely beautiful, right? Evergreen grass. I mean, it was beautiful. And he led a very simple life in Australia. It was not a temple, it was just a container on top of a hill, right? So people would bring him food and all of that. So this monk, he relates this story where he goes to Sri Lanka after the war. No, at the last end of the war, right? Last end of the war, and while the last end of fighting was there, so he goes and he walks up north, right? And when he crosses, I think it was Kilinochchi or Vaunia, I can't remember where exactly it was. When he crosses, there was an army military border, and the military did not allow him to go ahead. And he said, no, I take responsibility for my life. You don't have to take responsibility. And the military actually tried to sort of, they at first they forbade him, and he said, no, I'm going to go somehow. And you let me go through. You don't have to take any responsibility for me. I will take my own responsibility, right? And the military actually, they got him to sign a document, right? Relinquishing responsibility for the military, and he did sign it, and he walked ahead. And as he walked ahead, the and gone into the area where the fighting was happening, very close to it. And he went into one of these houses, abandoned houses, right, of the people up there, but it had been abandoned. But it was just, he could hear the guns being shot and the bullets going off, right, and almost hear the bullets sort of traveling through that area, right? He could literally hear. And he says he knew that at any point he could die, right? He did not go into the area with hopes of returning. He not that he was going to commit suicide. He was going with, jivita apekshava attarala, letting go of the need to live, that, and embracing the possibility of death, right? He walks to this area and he goes into giving up the possibility of life. He goes into meditation, deep meditation. And he says, because of the fact that he knew that one of those bullets would penetrate through the walls and hit him at any moment, right? His meditation depth went into places that he had never experienced before, meditating in Australia or any other monastery in Sri Lanka that he was based in, that it went so beyond the depth that he has experienced before. Why? Because he had let go of life or the need to live. He was in the present. He was forced to be in the present. And he put himself in that position. He put himself in that position. This is the transcendence, the power of the transcendence, from worrying about this life, this continuum of existence that we have been on. The Buddha says, one of those things, now the Buddha is Sabhanyuta, omniscient, right? Siyalla Dat, knows everything. The knower of the Buddha is to know everything, omniscient, right? However, the Buddha cannot see the beginning of the world. The Buddha does not know the beginning of the world. They don't use the word does not know, they say does not see. Because the beginning of the world is so long. It is a continuous cycle. Just imagine, everyone. Just imagine. The Buddha says, there is no being in this samsara who has not eaten a morsel of food. No, he says there is no being within this Mangala Chakravala. Mangala Chakravala is the universes, the set of universes where the Buddha arises. There is no being within the Mangala Chakravala, right? That a being that has not been fed a morsel of food by the Bodhisattva. So we've all experienced the Buddha's dana. And we still experience the Buddha's dana of the Dhamma, right? But he's literally talking about food. Such is the length of our existence in this round of rebirth and death. We have all been married. We have all been each other's sisters and brothers, mothers and fathers, friends of the Dhamma, holy friends and unholy friends. I might have killed all of you with my bare hands, choked the life out of you so many times in samsara. It's true, Gaide. It's true. I might have gone in hell and burnt in the fiery pits of hell for doing so, and come back and done the same thing to you again and again and again and again, up until I became a Kalyana Mitra to you. This, and you might have done, all of you might have done the same to me and gone to hell for it. Such is the extent of our life in samsara. Such is the fallacy of the six sensory doors telling us that this is life, that this is your family. Yes, they are your family, but only in this birth, remember. Only whilst this body is maintained, they are your family. But should you come in your next birth or the birth after that to meet your family again, they will not be accepting you. Why? Because you don't have the body. You don't have the body that they're used to. They can't see you as their mother or their father. Such is the fallacy of these relationships that we think will last. They do not. Even if they do not last within this, or even if they do last within this lifetime, they will come to seize upon the death of this body. This is the truth. This is the fallacy, the hallucination that we have embraced as so-called life. So the things that you've done wrong, you've done it millions and billions of times before. The things that you've done right have also been done again and again. The only thing that we have failed to do is the cultivation of Vipassana leading towards enlightenment proper. The only thing that we might have failed to do in samsara is the attainment of Sotapanna, path and fruit, Sakadagami, Anagami, and becoming an Arahant. And this is something that we can do right at this moment. And to imagine that the only thing that we must do to make secure progress within our path is only one thing, everyone. Observe. Learn to observe without the notion of self. Learn to experience without self. Learn to deal with those experiences without self. And you will be on the path towards Sotapannahood. For that, we start with concentration and focus. Cultivating Anapanasati daily, prioritizing Anapanasati beyond anything else, prioritizing the practice beyond everything else. So then the practice will trickle down into each and every daily experience that you have. And with every living moment, when your mind is in right attention, the hindrances will fade. And as it does, you will start experiencing the lights leading into the nimittas, leading into pure, sublime samadhi. Afterwards, we master this samadhi. In mastering this samadhi, the samadhi becomes our tool, like a sword is to a soldier, or a rifle or a gun is to a soldier nowadays. You start using samadhi as a tool to dwell deeper, to realize what is nama, what is rupa. Truly, not in the way that you think, because now it's selfless attention. So what you think does not matter. What matters is things as they actually are. And in realizing that, what happens is now Vipassana insights start to occur. You start truly seeing the nature of things as they are, arising and passing. How that subtle attachment arises through the prapanchas, through those different phenomena, creating attachment. When you see the five aggregates, Nam and Rupa, in those attachments now fade. They come into a state of dissolution. Now, deeper that you go, it becomes so much more interesting because you see your views ceasing, your hatred ceasing, your burdens ceasing. This is the path, everyone. This is the Satipatthana in a bit more detail as it is. And the Satipatthana, when it says that this is the only path, it really means this is the only path. So as meditators, what you can do, and as people who have some sort of passion towards Buddhism and the Dhamma, what you could do is first practice to a certain extent, learn about it, apply the learning into the present moment. Does that make sense, everyone? Right. So for me, I am very much, having come from Burma, having had roots in Burma and learning from Burma, I would very much advocate for all of you to take up the study of the Abhidhamma in a manner that you can now, what the Abhidhamma will teach you is what is Nama, what is Rupa. So when those consciousnesses arise, we know exactly what consciousness it is. It becomes far more easy to break things up when you know what Nama and Rupa is. Right now, if you haven't studied the Abhidhamma, what you only see physicality as Rupa, but physicality, Rupa, can go far beyond physicality. Just the notion of physicality. When you see consciousness, you might only think about the mind, but there is greater depth to consciousness than you imagine. So Abhidhamma offers that pathway, that guidance that allows you to go into those deeper insights, to allow those insights to mature and progress at this very moment. Any questions, everyone? All right. So if there are no questions, let us come into a guided meditation practice for 30 minutes before we end the session. And if you have any questions, then let us discuss them then. Let us sit comfortably. Let us take a deep breath in, coming into the present. Closing our eyes gently, observing the rise and the flow of the breath within this present moment, as we give ourselves this moment of practice to put away the past and the future and to simply observe what is right here, right now. The body upright, the chest open. Focus upon the present breath at the tip of the nostrils. Observe, observe, observe. Gently, as you let go of your surroundings, things that you have to do through the day, encumbrances and challenges that you have faced, and allow this moment to be purely of the present. Observe the liberating feeling that you start experiencing, the tranquility of the present. Gently, gently. Observe the breath. Observe. 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 The breath. Every time the mind may wander, gently bringing back your attention to the present breath. Try to observe without control the rise and the fall of the breath. The rise and the fall of the breath as it occurs. Bring about a seamless flow of attention over the organic, the involuntary breath. In stillness, embracing the peace and silence. Observe. 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 With stillness and attention, let us observe the breath. Arising and passing in its own nature. Observe. Observe. Every time the mind may wander, gently guiding your awareness back to the breath. This is the nature of the mind, the monkey mind, as the Buddha said. We will teach the mind to be with one object, observing the breath. Gently, gently. Observe. Acknowledging the tranquility of mind. Acknowledging the tranquility of the present moment, the peace of being within the present. Observe. Observe. Gently, gently, gently. Continue to observe, being within the present, right here, right now. Observe. Observing the breath as it arises and passes. Letting go of any need to control. Let us cultivate a seamless flow of awareness of the natural breath. Gently let us observe. Advert our minds to recollect the aspects of the practice. As we gently take a deep breath in, breathing up, observing the aspects of the practice. Deep breath in, breathing up, relax, gently relax. Deeper and deeper. Taking another deep breath in. As we breathe out, gently opening our eyes and awakening into the present. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, everyone. So before we close the session, are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? All right. So if not, then we will be closing the session for today, and we'll be having the session again next week at the same time, where we discuss something further with regards to the foundations of Vipassanā. So take care, everyone. Wishing everyone all the blessings of heart to make efforts to progress along the practice. And also, final note before we do end, make sure that you do practice every single day. And that is imperative to experience the progress in the practice and to truly taste the fruits of the practice, as the Buddha has mentioned. And anyone who does, you will surely experience the benefits and the fruits of the practice. There's no reason as to why you should not. So Theruvan Sarana, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you,
Theruvan
Bhante.
Saranai, Theruvan Saranai.
Sarana, Bhante.
Theruvan Sarana, Bhante.
Theruvan Sarana.
Everyone, Bhante.
Everyone, Saranai Bhante.